Thank you very much for having us in your city to take a look at what complex land use issues you're dealing with across the street, and for us to bring in some experts from the ULI to take a look and provide you some recommendations that you can go forward with. It's also wonderful to have a large group of people to present to. I think it makes them feel like the work that they've done over the last couple of months is appreciated by a number of people from the city as well as those in your community. So thank you all for taking time out of your afternoon to be here and listen to what the ULI has to say and answer any questions that you have as well. So the ULI is a nonprofit research and educational think tank. We are not a trade association. In fact, we represent every sector within the land use planning and real estate development area. And we focus on research and education. We don't lobby. We aren't an advocacy group. We aren't a developer. We're not here to suggest any or to support any particular project across the street. We came here to look at the complex land use issues that the city of Laguna Hills is dealing with over in the vicinity of the Laguna Hills Mall. And this is something actually that the Institute's been doing for about since 1947, so 60 plus years. And the advisory services are where members who have expertise in the particular issue that we're looking at volunteer their time. So they've actually given their time as a way of them giving back to the community, giving back to their profession. They volunteered their time over the last couple of months to do their due diligence. They've reached out to stakeholders the city has provided to us. And then they've been sequestered here for a day. We let them go out for a few minutes to see that it wasn't raining. It had been raining, but it wasn't raining now, so they could actually see get some fresh air, and then come back to finish up the presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our co-chairs. We had Elizabeth Cobb from Shea Properties and Yolanda Sepulveda from Fuse Community Design, who led this panel. I'm going to introduce them now, and they're going to introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Phyllis, and thank you all for having us here today. We've definitely all had a great time getting to know Laguna Hills a little bit better, as well as the community and stakeholders for this specific study area. One of the ways that we structure a panel is after meeting with the city. We sit down and really think about who are the key people needed for us to prescribe a really accurate solution or recommendation. So in this case, I will present to you our panel. Jason Fick with JZMK Partners. Simon Hibbert with JZMK Partners. Doug Campbell of Campbell & Campbell. Joe McClyde of Cooper Care Inc. Dan Falcone of One Iron Salva.
Jason Silver with Jamboree Housing. Steve Crosley with Fair & Pierce. And Susan Davison with Fuse.
These are a couple pictures taken from the field, and as part of the initial piece to the process, we like to take a walking tour, or in this case a bus tour, that staff was so kind to tour us around, and we all packed up into a van and basically drove the site to get a better feel for context as well as some of the issues that may be present on the site. So, team definitely did their research, and with this I'll turn it over to the citywide heritage piece with them.
A process like this begins with rediscovering and building community. Starts with rediscovering who we are. Our pioneer heritage, our heritage that's brought forward into the future by our families and by our unique characteristics here, the service families. I have to say, I have a personal great deal of affection and interest in this community. I grew up going to roundups on the O'Neill Ranch. My godfather's ancestors were amongst those people there, the Soldados de Cuero. One of my son's best friends at the Naval Academy was the daughter of a Marine Corps family here, and he's convinced that one of these days she'll be president. So we have a strong sense of the fact that to begin to rediscover authenticity, we're building on who we really are here. Context. Joe.
So that the challenge for us was trying to understand what I think a lot of you already know about the area, and that's where Vern and Don and the guys at the city were really helpful in taking us around. But you can see on the right, I'm only pointing out the obvious for everyone. The study area is located right off the 5, bounded by Los Alisos, Via de la Carlota, Paseo de Valencia, and kind of El Toro. So it's a very unique site with a lot of mix of uses, which have a lot of great components for an urban village, which makes it perfect for what you guys did with your specific plan. With major land and property owners, with the Laguna Hills Mall and the Oak Brook Village Shopping Center, as well as the hospital being a major attraction. And you have the transit facility from OCTA, which is it has a lot of good ridership numbers for South Orange County. So from there, this is kind of more of an extension of what we did to gain an understanding of what the experience was going through the entire site. Understanding how to create connections through an area that is predominantly covered by a lot of surface parking lots. So with all the great uses that are within the urban village, there's a big disconnect from the parking and the open space and maybe lack of sidewalks sometimes and connecting different uses. More of the parking lots that are characteristic of the mall area. Large streets offer an opportunity to maybe get to something a little bit more intimate, to get more pedestrian scale, growing sidewalks. And this is some of the good investments that have started to take place with the improvements along El Toro, the new City Hall facility, which you guys have done a very beautiful job with, and the open space and how to start to capitalize off of some of these great assets. And then dealing with things such as destinations can be a curse and a blessing at the same time. And it kind of says the mall is an attractor, but the mall is also can be a disconnect for different uses as well. Lack of a sense of authenticity. There isn't really there, some people say, a place that is a true identity for Laguna Hills, which could happen within this site. This is one of my favorite pictures. I'm here for you, and this is kind of this is from one of the OCTA buses. But a chance to really enhance what the transit rider is really the pedestrian. How can we enhance that experience of the transportation, which is a valuable asset within the urban study area. You have the transit center. You have a series of, I think, what causes some of the issues of the islands is you have a bunch of competing properties. There really isn't a communication or a synergy between different land uses, whether it's the mall or whether it's the hospital or whether it's the Oak Brook Shopping Village, but trying to find a way to get these people to start to talk and really leverage what each group is trying to get accomplished. Residents focus on a destination, overlooking infrastructure hurdles. I think the biggest challenge is you want a place that's really walkable and it really fosters pedestrian activity, but the challenge is it's very auto-centric. So how do you deal with breaking down some of the auto dominance to really enhance what pedestrian activities and connections could be within the site? And with that, I pass it to Yolanda to talk about outreach and
So again, one of the challenges, as Joe has mentioned, is coming into a community and really doing an accurate job of assessing and summing up enough information to give us as broad of a scope and as intimate of a scope as you all have as residents. Part of that, and the way that we do it, is we take a very in-depth, intimate approach to the interviews, stakeholders, and a lot of the outreach and expertise that we seek to advise us and to kind of help support and augment what our recommendations will be. Stakeholders include city staff, obviously we've met with you, local land and business owners, property managers, and other interest groups. These are a list of the various people that we talked to and interviewed via either telephone or in person. These conversations basically were comprised of us speaking with them about what their ideas were, their visions were, to really make sure that we were as informed as possible and had taken into account as many different opinions that were pertinent to the solutions that we would be prescribing. With that, I will turn over the opportunities and constraints piece to Elizabeth.
So after we had time to study the existing conditions, had time to talk to stakeholders, and we joined here today, and one of our first duties to do together as a group is to kind of evaluate what those opportunities and constraints are. And as you see, there's quite a number. Sometimes when we do this, there's just a few on one side and a lot on another. So I think it's good to see that we have about equal amount of opportunities and constraints. I think while I can read through all these, some of the highlights from the opportunities is that you do have the infrastructure in place. You do have the components and the uses that really can create a very viable and marketable area for future development. Some of the constraints with that, though, is that there is multiple property owners, and some of the things we found through our interviews appear to be like a silo of communication. Not everybody was talking as property owners amongst themselves, albeit they were talking to the city, and we weren't sure all that information was being communicated collectively. We can also look at the opportunities of just the area and the location that you're at, that the weather, the beauty that surrounds you, as the heritage that was described. But kind of a constraint is what is that identity? How's it being reflected in this town center? That that is a desired energy synergy for the community. So with that, I'll leave it to Jason Silver, who will touch on the guiding principles.
Thank you. When we met this morning, we came up with basically 5 different areas where we want to kind of guide the principles for this report. First was basically placemaking. We hear it all the time, but what does that really mean? And it's really unique to every community. This is why we kind of use the word authentic. What is authentic for Laguna Hills? Not for Irvine, not for Orange, but for Laguna Hills in your community. If creating that downtown nuance is specific to this, and we think that'd be a great competitive advantage compared to Mission Viejo, compared to the spectrum up north. Market viability. What do you see? What can the public sector do to create more of a viable? And this doesn't necessarily mean stimulating with money, but it could be in the process of collaboration, which I'll jump to down at the bottom in a minute. But it's a city maybe it's bringing the stakeholders just to the table as well, but leading that role, that charge, but also being the keeper of all the ideas, the safe of all the works that everyone does and can go forward in planning the project. Transportation, OCTA, when I spoke to them, they were very enthusiastic about this, even though funds over there, as you all know, are very tight due to the economy in the state's non-funding. They are very much interested into working with the council in this and establishing a balance and working to establish a balanced multimodal network, but basically focusing on pedestrian. And maybe that is the reduction of streets and less cars, but cars still being very much integrated as Orange County. And also land planning that could be used as how can I say this? Basically, you can use it the city can use land planning to be a catalyst for the project. So a long-term vision in mind, but meeting short-term goals with tires hit the road. And then of course collaboration, I said, could definitely be the mechanism of dialogue happening. Again, bringing the stakeholders to the table versus possibly calling, but we definitely see the folks and talk to the businesses and whatnot are definitely anxious to work with you to make this happen. But again, the 5 guiding principles that you see are top, and we'll be speaking for